Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today we have our Young Professionals Forum for their second meeting of the year. I'm Rukshan Soysa, Operations Manager of ITS UK, and joining me for this afternoon session are two speakers and our two forum chairs, James Bullen of Atkins and Ashik Nazar of Arup. Now, as always, there will be a discussion session after the talks. Don't forget, you're more than welcome to pose any questions you may have at any time during the next hour using the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address all questions at the end. To remind you, the webinar is being recorded, so if you have any objections to this, please let us know. But otherwise, the full video recording will be available on our YouTube page at some point early next week. So, as you're all aware, the current pandemic has impacted many industries and sectors. The transport sector certainly been one of them. It's been a dominant feature of the government briefing since the start of the outbreak, and so this is very much a topical issue. So in this session, we're going to explore that a little bit further. We're going to explore some of the opinions and views of our individuals that are joining us this afternoon and see what impact there has been and what potential challenges lie ahead within the future of the transport industry. So to help us do that and to kick things off, I'm going to hand over now to James, our forum chair, to introduce our first speaker. So over to you, James.
Thanks, Rukshan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the Young Professionals Forum webinar today. Just a little bit about the forum if you're not aware. So the forum aims to create an environment to inspire those in the early stages of their career, and it's not solely focused on those already in the intelligent transport systems profession. It's anyone who holds an interest really in transport, and to undertake further career development and to encourage collaboration, engagement and innovation amongst us as like-minded individuals. So we do have we have a great topic and great speakers today. So please do speculate, please ask questions. That's what this forum's about. It's fairly informal, so just enjoy yourselves. It's Friday afternoon, so let's enjoy it. So we've got two speakers today. We've got Yousef Majeed from Arup, and Keelan Fadden-Hopper from Transport for West Midlands. And as Rukshan said, they'll be giving their views and opinions on the impact of coronavirus on the transport industry. Ashik, did you want to say anything just before Yousef starts as Vice Chair?
Hi everyone, as James summarized pretty well, we've got two fabulous speakers today and looking forward to an insightful afternoon. And my name is Ashik and I'm the Vice Chair of the forum. Looking forward to some interesting questions as well at the end of the presentations. So over to Yousef and Keelan.
So yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, obviously, to speak at this webinar. I'll just give me a second. So quick introduction to myself. My name is Yousef Majeed. I'm an associate based from Arup. I work in the intelligent mobility team. Been here for about 3 years now. I started my career back in 2006. Well, I actually started working as a graduate ITS engineer, and really over the last 13 years, I've very much been working in transport and in particular within ITS and intelligent transport systems. So this presentation, which I'm presenting now, is very much about the work and the support that we've been providing to the Department for Transport, very much in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So onto the first slide. Some of you may be aware of the transport graphs being shown. That's being kind of presented daily during the government briefs. And it kind of shows the change in transport use across a number of modes, such as public transport, the tube, and motor vehicles. So the initial request for the work was driven by government to report on the impact that COVID-19 has had on the network, to allow them to be better informed to make decisions in response to the virus. So although the DFT are well informed on the Highways England strategic road network, they've had fairly limited visibility on the local roads. So therefore, in response, the DFT issued a call to arms to all local authorities and private companies to provide whatever data they could that could help support that analysis of traffic, cycling, parking, and pedestrian impacts. And to be fair, they received a really positive and overwhelming response from that large number of authorities, which has been fantastic. And as a result of that, we managed to get a fair wide range of data sets to work with. So through the existing Transport Technology Forum framework, which the DFT have, their Smarter Traffic Management team approached Arup to request we help lead that production of a data pipeline, and that's with support from Andy Graham at White Willow Consulting. So although we're not strictly providing our data at the moment to government, it's at least helping the DFT to understand how the lockdown has impacted traffic across the UK, as well as being able to continue monitoring traffic movement as and when any restrictions are relaxed. So our first requirement was to source local authority and industry traffic data and get it into a fairly usable state. So as a result, we managed to get a good geographical spread, as you can see from the figure, across a number of local authorities, such as cities, counties, and towns across England. We've been using multiple sources, so automated traffic counters, Bluetooth devices, ANPR cameras, and CCTV image recognition. So one of the key challenges that we faced was processing all of those various forms of data into a common output structure. So I guess to ensure that there was that level of consistency in the data, it was important that we kind of set baseline that February, the first week of February was treated as that baseline week, which we would compare to pre-lockdown, and also we would only use data where we were sure that we were going to be provided it on a daily basis. So as a result of that, we're now collecting daily counts from 26 data providers, and that's geographically kind of covering approximately 35 local authority areas. So fairly good representation across the country. So following that successful consolidation and provision of raw data, the DFT asked us to kind of develop an analytical tool to help support them in analysing the data. So we developed a first version Power BI report, which I've provided a snapshot of, one of those tabs, and it's ultimately showing that change in average traffic, daily traffic flow compared to the baseline, which again was that first week in February. So it's probably worth pointing out that this data hasn't yet been statistically validated by the DFT yet. So please bear that in mind. But however, it's quite clear to see that overall traffic has reduced by an average of around, 49% at least, certainly from what the graph is showing, for the period since the 1st of April when you compare it to the baseline. We've also compared it on a 7-day rolling average from the 19th to the 25th of May, and it's showing that traffic flows have increased there. So that's only a 37% reduction compared to baseline levels. So certainly we're starting to see that once these lockdown restrictions are being eased, we are starting to see some movement in the sense that traffic flows are increasing in the local network. It's also worth bringing in mind that some of the recent spring bank holiday weekend, so that was the 23rd to the 25th of May, which just passed, that experienced some fairly increased traffic levels compared to the earlier bank holiday. So already trying to compare them like for like, we're certainly starting to see that that increase in traffic flows. So now that the traffic data feed that we've been working on is in a relatively stable state, the focus is now shifted to cycling. So following the government's recent announcement about trying to get the country moving forward, they're trying to encourage the public to use as much active travel as possible, such as cycling and walking, mainly around trying to restrict or reduce the need for public transport. So this has been backed by the government's recent announcement of a £2 billion package to relieve the pressure off that public transport, such as reallocating road space for cycling and restricting road traffic. So this means like moving into this new phase, the data we're starting to collect for cycling is so important, as it helps kind of gain some insight into understanding the public's movement and possibly supporting local councils to understand whether they need to repurpose their infrastructure to support these changes. So we're consolidating, just like the traffic data, we're consolidating cycling data from a wide range of data sets, including directly from local authorities, as well as some commercial entities such as Vivacity, Traxis, and the Canal and River Trust. And the data's been interesting. It's been mainly split across recreational and commuting trends, but we're starting to see different patterns across the country, which has been quite useful. Similar to the traffic data, the data has not yet been validated by the DFT. However, it does suggest from the graph that cycling volumes are continuing to increase since the lockdown began. This is assumed to be a combination of improved weather and increased recreational cycling during that lockdown period. Other data suggests that cycling volumes remain highest during the afternoon and evening, which as a contrast to pre-lockdown when it was mainly featured for the morning and afternoon commuting peak times. So obviously weather understandably plays a really big part in the use of this data, where we'd expect to see a general increase as we approach the summer months and those days start getting longer. So we're therefore trying to get hold of data from previous years so that we can make some more informed comparisons on a month-by-month basis rather than comparing it to the first week of February. So on top of all of this data that we're looking at the moment, we've also started making contact with the likes of Strava and a number of cycle hire schemes to try and help fill in those gaps and provide a bit more of a representative picture of active travel use in the network. We're currently investigating, we're not currently investigating much into walking at this point in time. I think mainly as the DFT have started considering using the likes of Google and Apple. So moving into parking data now, we've just started engaging with some of the parking community, like British Parking Association and parking payment service providers such as Parking Eye, Ringo, Pay by Phone, Just Park, and Appiway, to help try and build up that parking data set, and that'll help kind of complement, I guess, what we're trying to collect already from traffic and active travel. From Parking Eye, as you can see from the graph, that's what that data is showing. We've managed to secure data from across 40% of the UK's car parks, including sector level analysis. So hopefully we'll be able to make some good insights into that. Parking across all sectors remains below baseline levels. So as the graph shows, it's showing a reduction of 69% compared to baseline. But when looking closer to the data at a sector level, there's some interesting trends which we probably may not come as any shock or any surprise, but county parks have seen, or country parks, sorry, have seen a significant rise in parking levels over the past week, mainly due to the weather and certainly from a lot of people using that as part of their exercise. NHS facilities have experienced a reduction, which may be contributing to the fact that even though there's a lot of workers going, hospital admissions might be dropping. Sports clubs, leisure and gym parking has also fallen significantly, as would be expected, with very little sign of any recovery from there. And then standalone supermarkets are also seeing a reduction as well. So with that sheer volume of data that we currently have at our disposal, we're going to have to try, it's going to be interesting to try and understand some of those trends. And I think we're going to have to break it down by areas such as related purpose, or types of destination, so we can at least start trying to compartmentalize each of the numbers that we're looking at. We expect there to be a fair number of challenges in working with the data, especially where parking data varies in quality and levels of granularity depending on the sources that are being used and the systems that data is being collected from. So it makes it quite difficult to compare it or combine that data from those different sources. other factors that should be considered as well, is including how some of that data may be distorted, in particular during this pandemic, where, for instance, parking near hospitals and other health social care kind of centres will be used for free by hospital staff, which if we weren't in the pandemic, it would potentially be used for other purposes. So final slide, really just kind of concluding to kind of discuss some of our next steps. So yeah, we aim to continue to collect more data sets for traffic, cycling and parking moving forward. We're also trying to gain some insights into freight travel at ports to try and understand the impact that COVID-19 has had on those movements. We're also investigating ways to develop the database and pipeline to try and allow the data to be extracted and processed automatically. And as well as that, trying to keen to carry out some more analytical work to gain that kind of insights into lockdown, and certainly when we start to continue to relax some of the restrictions. So I mean, for me personally, I believe this data is really important. It helps to provide that overview, I guess, of how public behaviour has changed due to lockdown and how it's changing as a result of these recent restrictions that we're seeing. And whether those travel patterns are going to end up returning to normal or a new normal. And a lot of that could be driven by, I guess, behaviour on how the public, I guess, perceive using different types of transport for their own safety and convenience. I also believe a lot of local authorities can benefit from this, where they'll be able to kind of compare what's happening in their areas against the national picture, and also allowing those local and national comparisons to kind of be drawn out. So I guess considering the circumstances that we're in, I think it's been a really good opportunity to help build this kind of database that's helped to kind of add significant value in understanding about our travel behaviours. It also helps consider where investment in technology and sensors need to be placed moving forward, even beyond this pandemic. And it's potentially also helping develop policy moving forward. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and obviously happy to take any questions later on.
Great, thanks very much. Rukshan, have we got any in the chat panel there, or any questions come through?
Only one at the moment from Carla. So I see there's around 10 attendees still listening, so please do keep your questions coming in if you do have any. Now's your opportunity. But we'll go straight to Carla's question, and she's asking, I think, to both of you, just in a general context, how do you think we could encourage active travel 12 months of the year so it doesn't drop off again in winter?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And like you say, it's certainly from what we've seen from the data, and also following on with what Keelan was just presenting, yeah, a lot of the uptake in active travel, whether it's cycling or walking, can, as a human behavior point of view, will be dictated mainly by the weather. So we would expect during those winter months that some people would feel less inclined to get onto their bike and commute and so forth. So it is a difficult challenge, and I think it's not something that you are going to be able to keep a steady kind of level across the year. But there are ways that the government and local councils can help facilitate to at least maintain that. So similar to a few things that Keelan had already mentioned. So I don't want to go into too much detail because Keelan, you probably have a lot more to say about it. But very much just about looking about repurposing some of the current and existing infrastructure to see how how it can be made to more safer and certainly more kind of convenient for users, so that they, despite the weather, they still feel encouraged to get out and start walking or cycling. And I think the other aspect is it kind of goes back to this mobility as a service kind of level, where if there's any ways that we can try and encourage or including active travel within that a bit more, so that people are kind of breaking it up. So they have, if they're too far away from their town centre, we're not expecting people to walk or cycle all the way there, but if there are ways to encourage the use of public transport or their cars with park and ride, and then a part of their journey they can use for active travel, I think that would be really good. It might also need to be a message around health. Maybe this is a good opportunity to try and encourage and promote the need for health, and that might get some people working. But I think the data might help at least show where people are traveling and where people are using the routes, and as a response, a lot of government, the local councils and governments can look to try and repurpose that.
So we've talked a little bit then about the practical approaches to all these changes. Now, here's a specific question regarding the health impact from Dylan. So he's asking, is the current government policy to discourage public transport use and increase car usage where active travel isn't feasible disadvantages to decreasing the mortality of people suffering from COVID-19 due to increased respiratory issues surrounding air pollution? So it's more of a health-related question there.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. I mean,
yeah,
and I can't say what I'm going to say is correct or so. But I mean, obviously, what the government are trying to do right now is that there is an immediate or urgent kind of demand to try and help, I guess, reduce the number of cases and unfortunately the number of deaths due to COVID-19. And as a result of that, they're trying to discourage how people are, people are keeping their social distance, and if that means getting into your car and being able to kind of adopt that, then I think that kind of works, and it helps kind of maintain that kind of objective. I don't know if the current increased car usage as a result of this, whether that increased air pollution will be quickly seen. Not that is okay, but I don't know if that's going to be quickly seen to have an issue with people's respiratory issues due to COVID-19. I guess if COVID-19 is something that we're going to see for the next 10 years, then I could see that being potentially a big problem. But I think in the short term, I think it's very much about the government just trying to kind of reduce the number of cases and as a result direct deaths. But it's really important. I fully agree. I think what's been really one of the only few positive things that have come out of the recent COVID-19 pandemic is the fact that we have seen reduced air pollution, and that's been really promising. And it'll be disappointing if as soon as these restrictions are kind of lifted, we just go back to normal, or if like you suggest, get even more people in their cars. And this is a really good second chance really to try and keep that environment low, which hopefully as a result might help people in the long run on their health.
Yeah, excellent. I think given the fact that it's all unpredictable at the moment, it's hard to really make definite sort of predictions right now, given what's going on. There's a question from Azim who's asking, should we also not be looking at rail data? Talked about data from various modes of public transport. What about rail data and also the aviation sector? Do we have any thoughts on that?
I think they are. I mean, certainly what I was presenting was specifically around local roads, and that was only because that was a gap in the data that they had. But from what I understand, that data, I believe, I can't vouch for it, I think is being made available in some shape or form. But yeah, no, it's absolutely imperative that we understand, how all types of public transport or all modes of transport are being used at this time. Yeah, I think aviation I would expect to be very, very low at the moment, as we've certainly been hearing in the news. But yeah, again, certainly once we start, certainly once these restrictions are being lifted, I'm sure a load of people are keen to go on holiday. Probably not just yet, but in the medium to long run. So it'll be good to see how that uptake in different types of modes of transport, including aviation, will be considered, I guess.
I think that's all the questions at the moment. Does James or Ashik, do you have anything else to add, or anything else for our speakers?
Just linking on to the previous question, actually, Rukshan.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Yusuf, in terms of the data that has been coming in from the various councils, are there any similarities between the data, between how the data looks like, or did you have to ask for the data to look in a particular shape before it was sent to you guys? How did the metadata look like, essentially?
Yeah. It's so I touched on it very briefly in the presentation, but yeah, that was one of the big challenges we had, which was receiving data from different local authorities. That there's obviously always going to be a high likelihood that some of them may be, some of them are coming through APIs and some of them are coming through similar data sources. Some commercial entities are supplying data from a number of local authorities. So that certainly helps. But yeah, it's understandable that some of the formatting will be different. So I think it was important that we kind of agreed up front what was the key metadata that we were interested in looking, certainly as for the immediate or urgent need of understanding data, and ensure that we only kind of focused on those local authorities that could provide that data. If so kind of going a bit back to what I was saying, we had to make sure that they had data that kind of went back as far as the 1st of February, so we at least had something to compare against. And then likewise with being able for it to be provided on a daily basis as well was also key. So yeah, there was certainly a challenge with having to try and ensure that all the formats were correct. But yeah, we're in a relatively good shape with that now. Hopefully that answered the question.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Yusuf. Yeah, thank you.
Great. James, did you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I suppose I just wanted to, I find the cycling and walking area really interesting, and I wonder if, what you were saying, Yousef, about them being mainly recreational trips. And I wonder if we're maybe getting a bit ahead of ourselves and thinking it might be an opportunity, as at the minute they're almost additional trips to what people were already doing for recreational purposes. So, they're not decreasing the number of private car trips by using an alternative mode. So I don't know, are we getting ahead of ourselves, and how can we ensure that we use it as an opportunity that people are on their bikes more generally to sort of promote that modal shift?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cultural thing to an extent. I mean, you can look at some towns like Cambridge and Oxford, and they got massive uptake in. Those towns have been built. The infrastructure has been built around cycling, and I don't think it's something that happened overnight. If we were all to wake up tomorrow morning and have have cycling lanes set, would that just automatically, as a result, get people on the? I think it is a gradual thing. I don't think it's something we would like, but I don't think it's something we're going to see overnight. I think if we build the infrastructure, or if the local councils and governments build the infrastructure which allows people to feel, they can get onto the roads and feel safe to ride, and kind of touching on what you mentioned earlier about as much as the employers can help try and encourage workers using it for commuting purposes or for bike for work schemes and so forth. I think over time it can become. I mean, you mentioned you started in October. I'm hoping that's still, well, obviously not for commuting purposes, but you have to start somewhere, and it's just about making sure that momentum is been maintained. And I think it's going to be difficult to see something in the short run. Yeah. I think it is a cultural shift, I think.
So the infrastructure has to come first, though, which then that's quite hard to make the case for, then, isn't it? If you haven't got people using a particular route, but maybe they're not using it because the infrastructure is not there, so it's
true.
Hard to make the case for that, then, isn't it?
So I mean, some of the data we're looking at, we haven't got into that level of detail yet, but I mean, some of the data we're looking at is trying to understand where people are cycling currently, and if that kind of information can be supplied to the councils, they can at least understand what are the popular routes that are being considered, and they can look to see whether those are probably, as a priority, those are the routes that can probably be potentially upgraded. I mean, there could even be temporary measure factors or something that can be considered. Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's but I still feel this is something as terrible as what has happened, can at least also provide a great opportunity for things like this to kind of come bare, I guess.
And as well, just I suppose I wanted to ask you guys if you have any sort of advice for people trying to get into the industry. What can people do to help, you know, us realize the opportunities that we've been presented here? And to either of you, you know, to both of you.
I mean, I could start. I mean, I think it's a great time at the moment to be actually in working in intelligent transport systems. I mean, as I mentioned, I started about 13 years ago, and you know there was a lot of great buzzwords going about, but predominantly a lot of the work that I certainly got involved in was motorway communications, which was really good. But you know, fast forward 13 years, and it's incredible the kind of how quickly things have changed. And I think this pandemic has been a great opportunity to see actually how the need for transport is so important. So to have any involvement to kind of help you know, design or implement or help shape or shift policy so it kind of helps the needs of people to travel, I think is really exciting actually, and it really does link in with other forms of infrastructure as well. So I think certainly I think my advice is try and learn as much as you can. ITS is a huge kind of area that, you know, you don't have to specifically focus on one aspect. That there's everything from mobility as a service to motorway communications to, you know, the new exciting things like connected autonomous vehicles, electric vehicle charging. There's so much. So I think certainly if you've got the interest, that there'll certainly be a lot there that you can get your teeth into, I guess.
I think we have one more question from Azim. I think, yeah, we've got plenty of time. So we've sort of touched on this, you both touched on it before. He's asking, you know, is it too early to be making these big decisions on infrastructure and to decimate the industry further? Because you mentioned that, you know, you're still working on assimilating and generating data sets. And I think it's only in a matter of time in the future you can look back on it and have a more accurate perspective on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, kind of touching a bit on what Keelan mentioned earlier. Some of it might be just accelerating some programs that were already kind of in the pipeline, so to speak. So hopefully there is a need and a case for something like this, not just specifically a knee-jerk reaction because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but I mean, some of the infrastructure changes we're looking at can be temporary. It could just be a matter of, you know, setting up some temporary lane locations, you know, kind of restricting road traffic down certain roads, you know, at a temporary basis, so that you know, we can get more people, you know, cycling or walking, all the sorts. I mean, it may even be a matter of trying to restrict some certain kind of quarters or stuff in main cities to just be, you know, car free and testing that out. So there's. Yeah, I think it would be wrong to make wholesome, massive changes on infrastructure, especially as things are changing so you know, fluidly and rapidly on traffic over the last 2 months, but we expect that to be happening over the coming months as well. So I think it would be very short-sighted to just make some big wholesome changes.
Thank you both. I think that's the end of our questions, unless anyone else has anything to add. Feel free, we have a few minutes left.
Nothing from me, but Ashik, have you got any? Or
nothing from me either, but I think just on the last question, maybe there's always historical data available as well, which we could, you know, quite easily make use of whilst making, you know, imminent decisions if they're ever needed. So there's also that perspective there.
Something really interesting they've done in Manchester is they've pedestrianised Deansgate, which is one of the main roads running through the city centre. And I think they're sort of using this as a bit of a test bed now to see if it might work in the future even. And they do get a lot of delivery vans down there as well. So they'll have to think about that quite carefully. But they're using this time now to almost like trial it out. So I think this is, again, that's a good opportunity, isn't it, to try things like that and be a bit more bold in making those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much is driven. It's incredible because a lot of what we've done in the past is, we've built roads based on the data of accidents or anything by that matter. But it's interesting that a lot of the decisions being made now is all stemming back to the public behaviour and people's behaviour. I mean, for instance, if I was to go into Birmingham city centre, and if my, does my experience of thinking I won't want to go on a Saturday because it's really busy, that will change my perspectives of whether I want to go in. So that if I'm thinking like that and a lot of other people are thinking like that, that automatically impacts travel behaviour on all types of modes. And likewise, if I was to go in and start seeing, things that are being imposed, like, queuing outside shops, that experience becomes probably less appealing to a lot of people. And that, as a result, may make people shift or change the way that they kind of use different things like retail and, public places, and as a result, that is going to effectively change how public transport or all types of modes of transport are being used. So I think it all does come back to how people are behaving and how people think about the safety and convenience.
Thank you very much, everyone. James, I think we'll probably end it there. Do you have any closing remarks to make?
No, just thank you both to you guys. So that was a really good discussion, and certainly quite interesting thoughts there. So I'll leave that with you all to think about and simmer over the weekend. And do have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather. And thanks for all your questions as well. There's some great questions in there.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Keelan and Yousef, for taking the time to speak to us
today.
Hope you enjoyed it, everyone. And we'll see you at the next session.